Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Janice Wohl-Grenadier, and this is radio show number 1 for JudicialPedia. This is sponsored by JudicialPedia.com, and JudicialPedia.com is a new voice for the people, and anyone in the world can add a case. What we're trying to do is change the judiciary more towards America, bringing back our Constitution and not making our courts so cash and political. So how can we do this? We all have to understand and know what our Constitution stands for. We all have to know and understand our state constitution. We have 2 constitutions that we can demand due process in our courts through. The other thing we have is we need to educate ourselves on our rights. And one of the most important things is a grand jury. We have 4 parts of government. One is our judiciary, one is our executive, one is our legislature, and the 4th one is our grand jury. And our forefathers gave us the grand jury as a way to keep in check the other 3. And what's supposed to happen with the grand jury is anybody is supposed to be able to walk into the grand jury, ask for a special grand jury in order to investigate any type of public corruption that you've come across. Because we don't have our police doing it. We don't have, the FBI anymore has really made it clear they're not going to investigate any public corruption. So we need to work together. And one of the things we need to do is we need to vote in the right people. And today's show is all about that. And it's voting in a judge in Minnesota. And I'd like to introduce to you Michelle MacDonald. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about her first. She's an amazing woman. She stands up for her clients, and that is why she's had as much difficulty as she has. And everybody should know her story. She was actually in court representing her client when she was arrested for just taking a picture. So you can read about her story in the Sandra Gassini-Rucki book, The World's Last Custody Trial. She also co-authored with Bullied to Death with Michael Volpe. Michael Volpe worked with her on both books. And this is a story of a Virginia young man who fought for his children and basically wound up committing suicide. But I want to spend today, we can always one day go back to that story because it's an important story to know. But Michelle's story and where Michelle is going today is very important. She's running for Supreme Court Justice in the great state of Minnesota. And we have Michelle here. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Janice. Thank you for having me on your show, the inaugural show. I'm just so privileged.
I'm so excited to have you. I wish we lived so much closer. We've luckily gotten together several times. And I want everyone, I want to give you the opportunity to tell people about yourself and why you're running for the Supreme Court in Minnesota.
Well, I'm Michelle MacDonald, and I'm running for Minnesota Supreme Court. It's a statewide race. It's an appellate court, and what the Minnesota Supreme Court does, what their duties are, is to judge judges and their behaviors in the lower court, how they're handling court matters, and also to judge the constitutionality of our laws. Also, the Supreme Court, I just learned recently, is responsible for asking the legislature for the budget for all of the courts all over the state of Minnesota. So that's a task that I would like to be involved in or have input in, because I intend to really create, and I know I can, a unitive system of justice by having restorative circles implemented in every courthouse before you even file an action.
So basically what you're looking to do is to take us into a situation where we are no longer going in front of judges. We're settling our disputes outside the court with circles. Is that correct?
Right.
And can you tell us a little bit about the circles and how they work?
Sure. Restorative circles they've been around for a long, long time. They're practiced all over the state, the country, and the world. I learned the practice back in 2012. I had no idea there was this option, so it was news to me. I had been practicing law, litigating cases for 25 years, and once I learned this option from a judge in Minnesota, his name was Bruce Peterson, who had studied restorative circles, I knew it was the way to go for families in particular, the family community.
And I'd like to comment on that because actually Michelle has put me in a situation where I worked with a gentleman we were friends with, Cole Stewart, who unfortunately has passed. And it was very interesting because it brings a lot of emotion into a person, but it definitely, we need to find a way outside of the court system because we have so many judges that are ruling by cash and political and not constitutional rights. And that's one of the reasons Michelle MacDonald will do a great job as a Supreme Court justice, because it's a trickle-down effect. If you have a Supreme Court that's honest, you're going to have a circuit court that's honest, because the judges aren't going to want their appeals going up to the Supreme Court and coming back down to them on a regular basis. Right now, I know in Virginia, they never come down. The Supreme Court is pretty much doesn't do that. Michelle, have you ever done an appeal that has come back down to the court, or that you found that you got justice for your clients or were able to get justice for your clients?
Yeah, I've represented thousands of people in a wide variety of legal matters before hundreds of judges across the state of Minnesota, and at every level. So we can talk about district court, appellate court, the Minnesota Supreme Court, and also petitions to the United States Supreme Court. And yes, I have gotten justice in some of those cases. There's been dozens of them. And what's occurred to me, and I've gotten justice in the lower courts too. But what's occurred to me more recently, and it's you mentioned that the judges are not doing their job in the lower court. The education I would like to provide is we have people, we're in a court culture. Anytime we want to get our way, the go-to place is to lawyers and courts. And we think that's the place to go, and it's just part of our culture, part of the way people have grown up. And there isn't another avenue. You don't like what somebody's damaging you. You contact law enforcement, whether it's an emergency or not, whether it's a violent crime or not. You contact an attorney to bring it to court, or you bring it to court yourself. So court has assumed jurisdiction over millions of cases across our country, particularly in family, and many, the great majority of them, 99% of them, don't belong in court. So we need another option, and that's the restorative circles and the unitive system. I know I can implement in Minnesota with support from the other Supreme Court justices.
Now, you do the circles through Family Innocence. It's a nonprofit that you've dedicated to keeping families out of court and helping families move on from situations that are harmful to their unit. Do you want to go into Family Innocence a bit and how you got started with that?
I should mention too that for 33 years I've been practicing law firm and mediation, and for 22 of those years I was a small claims court judge and also a family court referee. And so around, well, I think it was around 2011, after a case I had been working on since 2008. So for 4 years I was working on this case, the case of Benedictus Ambuna, who was a black man originally from Kenya, Africa, who came into my office one day, and his son, his 10-year-old son, was gone. He wasn't at the bus stop. And we had to research and found out that there was a order that was done with no due process in chambers by a judge. And the unusual part about it was there was no abuse, and it was in family court that this order was done. And his wife was deceased. The child's mother was deceased. So that was when I thought it was going to be an easy case, because I thought, well, you know, he's the only living parent. Obviously, he'll have custody. And it took several years to resolve that, and ultimately it was resolved in a circle where it was just completely dismissed. Benedictus studied circles with me after that, and he was my inspiration for Family Innocence, which, as you said, is dedicated to keeping families out of court, resolving conflicts and injustices peacefully. We keep families out of the adversary process, and it's expanded to keeping a lot of people, landlords and tenants, out of the adversary process, neighbors out of the adversary process. Its circles are just so, there's a lot of humanity in them. But through Benedictus's case, I had a calling to abolish family court in 1 year, and Family Innocence did just that. Obviously, court still exists, but through our education, our mediation and restorative circles, and our limiting the jurisdiction of the court to only the orders that you need, which oftentimes is just a termination of marriage order, we have done just that. We've created a space for people. It's a consent process to come be educated and keep their family out of the jurisdiction of the courts, which is our U.S. Supreme Court jurisprudence. Not be in families at all.
Which is so important. I mean, coming up with solutions to our courts and coming up with solutions to a different way of doing things. I mean, I think we're seeing Black Lives Matter, we're seeing the rioters, we're seeing Antifa, we're seeing so much unrest in our country. And a lot of it stems, I believe, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, from people that have been in the courts and have been treated unfairly. Mm-hmm. And, you know, a police officer may not want to arrest you, but he maybe has a certain number of people he has to arrest, mm-hmm. or he has to show something. Mm-hmm. And we don't know how many judges and different people have investments in our jails. Mm-hmm. I mean, we need to probably really come up with a new system mm-hmm. for who goes to jail and who doesn't go to jail, knowing that today we have 10,000 people in jail illegally. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Follow the money. It's as simple as that. For example, I learned, and I was flabbergasted at this number, that one agency in Minnesota, it's called the Department of Human Services, that actually does the child support collection, which has evolved into a horrible system where people can't pay, but they have to anyway, even if they don't have the money. And I've seen it evolve into that over 33 years. So child support collection, they do child protection, which again has evolved. I'm working on a case right now where the foster son was taken away at 2.5, ready to adopt for nonsense, really, no abuse. So we have child protection, we have adult protection, that's gone astray. These these cases. There's also, what else do? They do medical, and there's one other important one that they do, foster care is another one. So the Minnesota Department of Human Services, one agency, they have 7,000 employees, and I like to ask people, take a wild guess as to what their budget is. And if you know, don't answer. For 1 year, I'll just tell you, are you sitting down? Yeah. 17.5 billion.
Well, you know, they say the average is $250,000 is spent on a child that's in foster care. Now, the family, and I don't know the complete dollar amount that a family who's taking care of the child gets. I'm sure it's under $1,000 or maybe right around $1,000 a month to house a foster child. And then you have the person who checks on the child, the person who checks on the person, another person who probably checks on the child. And I mean, it's when you go up the whole ladder, we've got that trickle-down effect again of where the top people getting their salaries have got to be, you know, $250,000, $300,000.
It is outrageous. Now, I come from a large family, as you might know. My father had 11 brothers and sisters, immigrants from Ireland, and I guess you could call it French-Canadian was his mother. So immigrant from Canada. My mom had 14 brothers and sisters, immigrants from Portugal, Azores, Portugal. Together they had 8 children, and when we were growing up, we had foster children. We had 2 beautiful foster children. We only had 5 children at the time. I was the oldest. And my parents did not get paid. It was out of the goodness of their heart. And suddenly they were swept up and taken away to their parents without any transition or anything else. Now, that's not a good thing either. But now with open adoptions, it's a little bit different. But what the mantra back then, and I was 11 years old, so we are talking a long time ago. I won't give away my age, but a long time ago. The mantra
but
back
you're
then
so
was,
pretty, you don't have to worry.
As a foster parent, 58. As a foster parent, you couldn't get too attached because you weren't able to adopt. And you also did it out of the goodness of your heart. So I just loved those babies. Kim and Dwayne, if you're out there, it was I was 11. So what year would that have been? 61, 71, 1972. You were both born on my mother's birthday, September 10th, like 71, 72. So if you're out there, we fell in love with these babies. But they got swept away because they went back to their family. As far as we knew, that's what you did. You were foster parents, and the idea was to get the parents on their feet. And now foster parents get paid. If you adopt, foster parents get paid. So adoptive parents get paid. Now I'm an adoptive parent. And obviously I didn't get paid. And somebody said at a campaign event the other night, whose daughter had adopted children, she pointed out to me, and I'm like, gee, what a great idea. Why are adoptive parents, and this is having to pay thousands of dollars to adopt a child, right?
Right.
They get the funding, if there needs to be able to adopt a child. So the system is totally broken, totally corrupted in that aspect. I can't tell you how many cases, and there's an organization called Family Foundation here who put out, they'll probably be watching this, they have about 6,000 members, and Minnesota, and it's run by a gentleman who was just here on business, and they took 3 of his children. It was just for no reason. It was just terrible, and he's fighting for justice in that realm too. Everybody has their place in the fight for this justice. I know you Janice, have your spot. my husband, Tom, just tells me, Michelle, you're a cog in the wheel. You can't do it all. You focus on what you're doing, keeping families out of court, doing justice through becoming a Supreme Court justice. So we all have our cog in the wheel in our important place.
Now, we just had Amy Coney Barrett, put into the position of a Supreme Court justice. And each Supreme Court justice seems to have something they say that is, we had Roberts, who, you're an umpire, you're not supposed to make a decision from who you like or what you like. You're supposed to, it's supposed to be the person who does the right thing, and you can see it in the documents and stuff like that. You're not supposed to do any type of bias. The judges only have a few rules, and they're pretty much allowed to do what they want, which has been a real problem. And I was wondering, from the things that Amy Coney Barrett stated, what you feel were exceptional or that just really moved you.
I did watch some of her testimony. What really moved me about her was she is a mother and wife who is supported by her husband. It sounded, like me. I have wonderful support from my husband and family, and we raised 4 children, and she's still raising children. And what I heard was that she stands for women can do it all. It's been a lie that we can't raise children at the same time, have a career, at the same time have an education, at the same time meet a great guy that actually supports us and loves us and lifts us up, and we lift him up. And so that's what was most amazing about her. And women, they say, have been lied to. We can be, we don't have to be man against woman, mother against father, child against parents, parents against children. We can all be connected and unified, and I think she stands for that.
What type of a Supreme Court justice do you think she'll be? Do you think
Well, I think she will abide by the Constitution. One of the things that people don't know is that the Constitution doesn't give us rights. We don't elaborate on it all that. We don't need to elaborate on it all that much. There are 64 million rules, laws, and regulations across our country, last I counted. And that's not counting the court orders that people have, where judges have orders that are the law of your particular case, right? Your particular family has an order. That's not even counting that. But the Constitution doesn't give us rights. What it does is it preserves and protects rights that we already have, rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, by virtue of being born on this earth. It's like the air you breathe. So when we talk about deprivation of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, what I see happening every day to millions of people is they've been deprived to one degree of another by these court orders of their liberties with their property and their children. And that is what has to stop. And they're actually asking for it. They go to court. They think they're going to get their way. Somebody asked me last night, who's running for senator, said, Michelle, people are always asking me, what about this 50-50? Should we have laws about 50-50 and making it 50-50? And I said, no, parents are 100%, 100%. And we have to yield to the rights of each other. I also said with child support. He said, what about child support? I have so many people, fathers, mothers, that are down and out. They have no money because it's being sucked up by the system. And I said, I have not had one individual come into my office in all my 33 years of family law whose child has not been supported with a home, even if it's a basement of your mother's house or a small apartment, the basic necessities of life, I'm talking food, clothing, the health care, and what I'm talking about that is your child skins the knee, has a disease, has the sniffles, breaks her leg. You're going to make sure that the child is taken care of as a parent. The other is education. That's mostly free, right? We have systems in place for education. So our children are being supported by parents. What our family court is robbing our children of is the love and companionship of each other, of the parents. That's what the system robs us of. And that's what needs to change. We didn't always have family court. I was explaining this, and I could go on and on when you get me wound up about talking about abolishing family court. We didn't always have family court. In fact, just like we go down and get married and get a marriage license, which that bothers me, because why do you need a license to do something lawful? And I learned that marriage licenses came about because they didn't want blacks to marry whites. They said, oh, you need a license, and they'd be checking it to say, okay, you're both white, next. That's where marriage licenses came from, that license to marry. So that shouldn't even exist anymore, or doesn't need to exist, and shouldn't, because look at the corrupt place that it came from. And courts used to not be places where you go to terminate your marriage. You'd go to the legislature and say, we're not getting along. We want to not have a marriage relationship anymore. And the legislature would give you another piece of paper saying that you have no marriage relationship anymore, so carry on in what I call family innocence. You have kids, you have property, those kinds of things. So we have to see it's something that I see within our grasp through education, because I think we've grown up going, well, what do we do when we're getting a divorce or about custody kids? We believe we have to go to court to get our rights, but no, we don't. The Constitution gives us our rights and protects our rights. We don't go to courts or the Constitution to get them. The courts and laws are supposed to protect rights that we already have by virtue of being born on this earth.
Right, our human rights. But we have a situation.
Human rights.
Our human rights. And the rest of the world all signed on to a human rights agenda except for the United States. Mm-hmm. And we basically have, what we did was we have our 4 freedoms where we shouldn't live in fear. And over half of America lives in fear of its government, of its elected officials, and of the judiciary. When we get a letter from the IRS, we don't sleep at night. We get a court order that we're going to have to do something with, and it takes the air out of us. Mm-hmm. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, a name for it is judicial repression.
Right. And we've got to change this, and how we're going to do it, I believe, is through JudicialPedia. At least I hope through JudicialPedia. And I'm just going to take a moment to explain to people about JudicialPedia. And you can go to the site at JudicialPedia.com, and basically it's a place for people to be able to put their cases up. And what we want to be able to do is get the big data we need to make the changes. Because when one person puts in a judicial complaint or one person puts in a bar complaint, they get ignored. But if you can go to a site and say, you know what, there's 5 other people who have had a problem with this judge, with this lawyer, we're going to be able to start holding them accountable. But it's more than that also, because if you go under the resources, you'll see we have several other sites that we are looking to put up, and we hope you'll support us with that. But we need to know if you get stuck in a guardianship, if you get stuck in any of these types of a divorce that's ongoing in the courts forever due to lack of due process. You need to know how you can maybe change it, how you can look at the situation differently, and who else has been through it, so that you've got the knowledge you need to go into court as to what your rights are. Mm-hmm. And one of the things people don't talk about much, I think, mm-hmm. And I want to hear your opinion on this, is case law.
Mm-hmm. There's a couple of reasons, that people don't talk about bad judges, and lawyers don't talk about bad judges, and judges don't talk about bad judges, that I'm learning. Okay, first of all, there was a movie that I actually, when it opened up in Minnesota, they asked me to go speak. It was called Divorce Corp. So I spoke about family court to the group of people watching this movie, Divorce Corp. And what I learned, to my shock, is that people speaking up saying they didn't like judges' orders were being jailed for years, just by putting out a Facebook or something like that, or some letter saying they didn't like what the judge had said. So I was in shock about that we can't leave the courtroom and complain. We only can complain through proper channels, expensive appeals, so to speak. And then so that's a really good movie for your listeners and viewers, Divorce Court, if you really want to learn about the corruption. Joe Sorge, whom I know personally from the movie, he had a family court matter, and he was so amazed at what he got himself into, or that this was the way family court operated, is that he took his own resources, his own money, and it cost him thousands, maybe millions, and he made a movie. So that's a really great movie, and he's out there advocating for justice in his way. We have the lawyers that I learned through my own, to my dismay, when I reported a judge to the Judicial Board the first time ever back in 2013 for what I believed was retaliation against myself and my client. I reported him, again, first time ever, years of practice, reported a judge, and I learned that you just cannot report a judge. This judge was on the Judicial Board, and I wrote 4 letters, and after that, nothing happened to him, but he wrote a letter to my lawyer board, and they investigated me. Every case I had, I'm pretty pristine, so they couldn't find anything. For years, I just get these letters saying, I'll give you an example. You had an argument with a judge in such and such a case, please explain. And I'd be like, okay, I'll just explain that. And it got to be very harassing, such that, and they make you answer within so many days when they send you these letters. And one time, and I thought I was going to get better after this, but one time they sent me a letter, and it's actually a violation if you don't answer on time. So what they can get you on is not the initial letter, like whatever they're claiming that you did, but they can get you on and this being late in the letter. Like they'll just say you were non-responsive, even if you're a day late, 2 days late, and they get you with that. And that can be their only claim against you, that you were non-responsive, even though you did respond late. I had that happen to an attorney I know. Many attorneys have called me with their issues with the board here in Minnesota and around the country, actually. So what happened when, at one point, I got this letter from the board. I was leaving on vacation. Obviously, I didn't want them to know where I was. I mean, it's like they're following me around. It seems like maybe it was just, and I faxed them a letter, and I said, stop harassing me. I am not going to be able to get an answer to your letter on time. And it got worse after that. I did answer I quickly answered, said I needed an extension, but it just got worse and worse and worse after that. And in the meantime, I was running for Minnesota Supreme Court Justice. And so I was just doing my own thing, just following what I felt was something that, my goals and my accomplishments, and something that I thought would help the state of Minnesota and everyone. And it was right before the 2018 election that all of a sudden I get sanctioned for basically from that judge's report. So we're talking. He wrote a letter in 2013, the beginning of 2013. It wasn't in 2018. From that letter, that the board decided to bring a petition to the Supreme Court and have a hearing, and I fought it all the way. And all the way, actually, I got sanctioned, and I fought it all the way to the Minnesota Supreme Court, and then the U.S. Supreme Court. And that'll answer the second question. I learned that it wasn't just me. Lawyers all over the country, I learned, and I researched this with my petition to the U.S. Supreme Court, were being muzzled, were being disbarred. I thought, wow, I got for saying something bad about a judge. One attorney, he had done a petition to the U.S. Supreme Court too. I connected with him. He was in Nigeria at the time, and he said, Michelle, I just wrote letters to the judge saying that I didn't like his decision, just a letter, and he got disbarred. So this was I also got in touch at that time, and she sent me excerpts of her book that I helped with. I sent her back some information. Margaret Tarkenton, she was a law professor, who had written several articles on how the voice of justice, us lawyers, were being muzzled and not able to speak, and free speech of lawyers and those kinds of things. So I used her information and some of the research she had done in my petition to the U.S. Supreme Court. And then she just wrote a book. It just came out, called Voice of Justice. Margaret Tarkenton, looked that up. And basically it's saying us attorneys are the voice of justice, and we're being muzzled, that we can't say anything bad about the judge decisions that we believe are wrong. So that's, we went through the people. So they got to the people. Now that attorneys are speaking up, going, like me, I'm going, wow, people can't talk bad about judges? That's interesting. And now we get to the judges, why the judges can't talk bad about judges. I learned. You never hear a judge saying, oh my God, when I was in the court, those judges, what they did to people was hard. You never hear it, right? Or you never hear anybody in the courthouse, right? Do you?
No, and I'm going to let you finish your comment, and then I'm going to comment.
Okay, there you go. Okay, I hear your producer there. Hi, what's your name?
That's Nick.
Okay.
Yes, I think he's enjoying
Anyway, you can chime in, producer. That's what you hear on, at least the radio shows around here. The producer's always chiming in. I heard him laugh. So with the judges, what I learned, oh my gosh, is that if they get in trouble or they want to retire, they actually have to sign to get their pension. They sign kind of like corporations do when you're leaving a big corporation, and you have to say you can't say anything bad about the corporation, and you can't compete and that kind of thing. Well, so I learned that judges sign that. That's why you never hear it, because they want their pensions.
So judges do compete because they come back after they've been let go or retired as guest judges, and they're used for people they want to marginalize and target in the courts. Mm-hmm. And and then they become a partner in a group that does mediation. At least this is Virginia. And they get $6.75 an hour for the mediation, which other judges appoint them to do. Now, that number can vary depending on how much money is involved in the case, but it's an outrageous amount, and there's no oversight to that amount. So it's kind of like they go from a job where there's no oversight to a cash cow job where there's no oversight. And a little bit about me, I am the ex-wife of the son of a judge. I've sat at the dinner table. I've seen how the deals in Virginia are made. Now, Virginia's different than Minnesota because we don't elect our judges. Our judges are chosen by lawyers who practice in front of them. So basically, everybody has a dog in the fight. Everybody has a financial position in the fight. We have judges who were law partners to different legal firms that their lawyers are going to always win. And one of the questions and why I wanted to, and we have several people on JudicialPedia, Retta Daniel, Isadora Rodriguez. Linda Kennedy isn't on there with her story, but lawyers that have lost their license and are standing up and fighting back. And that's the hardest thing to do because they beat you up so badly. I actually sued 43 federal judges as a pro se litigant. I'm a pro se litigant. I can't afford a lawyer, and no lawyer would touch me because they would automatically lose their law license. There would be no forgiveness for that. And so I've had to learn the system, learn how to respond. I'm held higher than anybody to the answer. And one of the things that's so frustrating for me is when you look at Sullivan versus state bar, an attorney's duty to the court is against concealment, non-disclosure, suppression of information as it coexists with the duty not to allow fraud to be committed on the court. And that's what we've got going on. We've got extensive fraud with lawyers who have made deals with judges in the background, coming into the courts, misleading the courts on the information, and the pro se litigant who can no longer afford and we're in the Washington, D.C. area. In Washington, D.C., if you're going to have a lawyer that's going to win, you're going to pay $500 to $1,200 an hour, if not more. And otherwise, you're not going to win. And it's a shame. But when you look at the judges, they created judicial immunity, which is just a smoke and mirrors. There is no judicial immunity. But they've created it with a case called Stump versus Sparkman. And in that case, they literally mutilated a young girl and told the judge it was okay. They took away her ability to have children. When she turned 18, got married, she came back to the court and said, you didn't have the right to do that. And they actually, I don't believe they did. But this is how they give themselves immunity. What's your thoughts on that, Michelle?
Oh, I have lots of thoughts on what you just said. First of all, the appellate court. Appellate court's like the last step in due process. There's 6 steps, and all of them have to be acceptable, so to speak. The first step is clear rules. So if you have a law like family law, it's as big as the family law is as thick as a phone book here in Minnesota. If you have the family law book, and it only applies to you when you're breaking up. Okay, I've been explaining to me, they're like, it does. I'm like, yeah. You have kids, you're married, you're not married, you have a home, you're sending your kids to school, you're paying for the medical insurance or just not paying and making sure that they are medically taken care of and love them. and those laws don't even apply to you until you're breaking up. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? Well, I think they're too complicated. So they're not clear. Obviously, they're not clear. I have a thought about, they call it best interest. Somebody used that word best, and I thought to myself, because and in Minnesota also, the appellate court calls some things harmless errors. Like there might be an error of the lower court, but they say, well, we're going to make this a harmless error, even though the person's appealing that's been harmed by the error, right? They'll call it harmless. And then I thought, best interest. Maybe we should just be talking about the interests of the child, not best, not worst. In the Sandra Grazzini-Rucky case, I actually I did an analysis of best. Best is like the greatest ever. It's the most wonderful thing. You're the best athlete. I'm the best attorney. You're the best radio host. I mean, best, it doesn't even exist, really. So interest of the child would be a better qualification if we were all just looking at the interests of the child.
Okay, so that's the first thing, right, with the clear rules, or was that all 6 of the?
No, clear rules is the first thing.
Okay,
so
sorry.
I'm giving you examples
I'm just very interested in this, and I think that our audience will learn a lot from it.
Okay, we can talk about due process. And this is all U.S. Supreme Court jurisprudence. The second step, you're going to love, because this hardly ever happens, is government adherence to those rules. So we're talking about law enforcement adhering to the rules. We're talking about lawyers adhering to the rules. We're talking about judges adhering to the rules. We're talking about probation officers adhering to the rules, government adherence to the rules, and that's to a T. And what I learned, and somebody told me this, and it rang true, if the name of the game is break a rule, you pay, the government, through these entities, child protection, you name it, can't break many, many, many rules in order to make you pay. So that's the second step in due process. If you don't have that, you don't have a due process. You have to go back to the beginning. Dismiss the case. And there's so many ways. I've said this before, where a government by the lawyers, of the lawyers, and for the lawyers, because almost everybody in our system is a lawyer. Even law enforcement is, a lot of them are lawyers. Everybody relies and looks to the lawyers. Judges are lawyers. Prosecutors are lawyers. So that's the second phase, is government adherence to those rules. I also wanted to point in that justice should be free. I think the Minnesota Constitution says that justice should be free, because what's it's evolved into, and you mentioned it earlier, all these costs, is that the government that's supposed to be adhering to rules, prosecutors, law enforcement, they're all getting paid, right? Paid big bucks. And then we are defending ourselves, and we're having to pay to defend ourselves. So what's wrong with that picture? And in order to get a public defender here in Minnesota, anyway, you have to be poverty stricken. Then once you have to not have a job, basically. And once you get a job, you lose your public defender. I had that happen to someone once. So you still don't have any money to pay a lawyer. So justice should be free, not like it is right now, where we have to pay lots of money to lawyers to defend ourselves against the government that is getting paid to prosecute or to go forward with cases. Justice should be free. There was another aspect to that. I lost it for a minute that I wanted to tell you about. That I lost track of, but anyway, we'll go back to the due process. But justice should be free. And filing fees. We used to have minimal filing fees. There's so many obstructions to going to court. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Mediation should be free. And people do it for free. They don't get paid. So my goal would be that all the restorative circle people would be paid. The people that do this work, we just trained 24 people that love the work. We're training 24 more this November, our second graduating class. So my goal is to get funding so that nobody has to pay, whether you're rich, whether you're poor. Somebody brings you into a system, you should be able to have an even playing field, and not. And I'm talking about the circle system. I think that should be the first step in nonviolent situations where you are going to a restorative circle, and no matter how much money you make, you get it for free. But the people get paid, because right now, as you know, mediators, and you did it with Pro Se America, you help people maneuver through the legal system, and you're a mediator too, mediate, and mediators don't get paid, or they get paid a lot less, and that's not their go-to spot.
Right.
So people say, well, why mediate if the other person's going to just still be attacking me through the court system? Might as well pay a lawyer or a defense. So it isn't I spend a lot of time, because I'm very popular with people calling me from all over the state, the country, and the world now. I got a call from California. I have somebody in New York that called me today, somebody texting me just wanting help, either legally or through family innocence. And there's always hope that everybody will come to the table, so to speak. But the cost, it makes it prohibitive.
And one of the things that I find amazing is the amount of money in the slush funds that the police have, that the Department of Justice has, the FBI. Every government has their own, or like you've got the DOJ, the FBI, patent offices. They all have their own little court system where they charge people with crimes, companies. And to get out of those, innocent or guilty, it costs you money. And that money is not accountable. So you read stories like $251 billion was paid in the foreclosure debacle, and where'd the money go? Because we can't find out.
Yes, they're being funded. Again, we talk about the Minnesota Department of Human Services. You know, if somebody gives you $1 million and somebody makes a phone call, you're going to do an investigation. You have the people, you have the manpower. They're not just going to be twiddling their thumbs. And so they're creating their own work. It's very interesting that way.
Well, especially,
I'll get to the third prong.
Yes,
I'll get to the third prong
yeah.
where you would fit in. But if you have any questions on that, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Let's go to the third.
So the third prong is adequate representation, okay? So what I'm learning is that in Minnesota, well, first of all, federal court judges, like Amy Coney Barrett before she was U.S. Supreme Court justice, and I think this might be true of U.S. Supreme Court justices too. Federal court judges do not have to be lawyers. They have to be learned in the law. Can you imagine?
I could be
somebody
a judge.
appoint. What?
I could be a federal judge then.
You could be a federal judge.
Yeah.
You could. Just ask President Trump, and maybe he'll appoint you, and maybe he should start considering that. He might not know. Everybody. When I learned that, I was flabbergasted, and I was at a end of court meeting, and there was a federal judge there talking about some appointments that were opening in the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. I think that's where he is. Yeah, he's the chief judge of the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, and he was talking about that, and I said, "Is it true?" I knew it was, but I still was wondering, because I looked it up. I'm like, you don't have to be a lawyer, and he said yes, and to the dismay of the whole room, all the lawyers are going, "Really? You don't have to be a lawyer to be a federal judge?" He said yes, but chances are no one would ever make it unless they were a lawyer. And that bothered me a little bit, because I think we have some learned in the law people. If we could just get down to the basics, like I'm talking about right now, that would make great judges. So learned in the law, so I wanted to say that, but adequate representation, so that doesn't mean lawyers either, in my view. It means somebody learned in the law, could be somebody, and a pastor was telling me last night that he went into court and he was dressed in a suit and he was just helping one of his parishioners with a criminal matter, and he was talking with the prosecutor and he was helping him. You know, people are distraught. They might have done something wrong. They want to get out of it. They're sorry, and so he cut a deal. And then they were before the judge with the prosecutor, and the judge said, and he said, well, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just like assistance of counsel. I'm just helping him with this case. And the prosecutor said, well, we were not going to do the deal yet. And the judge said, you know what? This isn't a bad deal. Do you want to do this? Yeah, you should do this. So imagine that, the lawyer just being so weirded out by the fact that he was, assumed that somebody was a lawyer. So assistance of counsel, adequate representation, even if you represent yourself, even playing field is the third prong of due process. So you need all these elements. So when people can't represent themselves and need help, it might not necessarily be a lawyer. There are people that are very astute in real estate matters. I've had people come into my office where I'm helping them as a lawyer, and I don't know the nitty-gritty of the problem. I'm a forensic fact finder, but as far as the forensics and how things work, so there's very much, sometimes a parent could be assistance to a child. And again, they can't they can't represent their children in court.
Well, but
I've seen it happen, but they're not supposed to be.
But you have to be careful, because you're not allowed to practice law without a license. In certain states, I mean, Virginia will go after somebody.
In all states.
Go after it. Okay.
Yes, and that has to change too.
Yeah.
That has to change. I just got connected with. They contacted me because of the campaign. It's called Universal Diploma. So I'm kind of thinking, I say this, I used to be in a box, and then it's a box, and then I was outside the box, and now I'm like, no boxes, right? So when somebody when people have said to me, why are we licensing lawyers? Why are we obstructing people learned in the law from helping people? And then lawyers that have licenses it's called unauthorized practice of law if they haven't paid their dues, or that kind of thing. It's more a dues thing, and also they're overseeing you, but the clients should be able to oversee themselves. Again, if justice was free, we could go more direct to the lawyers if we have a problem with them. I just see the lawyers board as not really very helpful. And I see malpractice. Oh my gosh! When you sue, I have a lawsuit, not against me. I haven't ever had a lawyer malpractice against me. Before Judge Knudsen filed, I had never had a client complaint go forward, so that was good. But we had I have this malpractice, clear malpractice, missed a statute of limitations, but what happens is the malpractice insurance lawyers, they're lawyers, and they're going to defend at all costs. So that isn't very helpful, that we can't have lawyers are just like, I didn't do, well, it's pretty clear you did something wrong, but then they'll have lawyers that are actually the gatekeepers at the insurance companies, and will have to bring a lawsuit in that one. He'll have to bring a lawsuit on his own. And so you have these obstructions because of the law license. We have obstructions. We're obstructing you from actually helping people, because it's not any, the laws are not any, there's 64 million of them. I don't know them all. And I'm a lawyer, licensed and all that. So it's very, I have some thoughts about that. Also, Minnesota, to be on the Supreme Court, it used to be you needed to be learned in the law, And then there was somebody who graduated from law school, this is what I learned, and was running for, court, running for judge, and they changed it by case law saying, no, you can't just be a law school graduate to be a judge. In Minnesota, you have to be a licensed attorney. So that's wrong. That's dead wrong. I think people that are learned in the law, if you can do it in the federal level, you should certainly be able to do it at the state level. But we're not anything. I think judges need to be more connected to the people, connected to the Constitution, and we just have them kind of just off in la-la land, not really connected to what's really going on, the reality of situations.
And what would number 4 be?
Number 4 is speedy trial. How about that? Does that ever happen? Yes. So what it used to be is I'd be if somebody would come in to me and say, I think I'm going to get prosecuted for something, right? And there was an investigation going on as to whether they were going to bring charges or not. And I've been doing this a lot of years, all kinds of law, by the way. I know I'm known for family law, but I've done everything. And at one point, probably 8 years in, I was working for a general practice law firm before I started my own practice, and we said, oh, we've done every single type of law except Indian law. And then, of course, I get the ICWA cases with the adoption work I do. So, okay, now I do Indian law. But I never, every case to me is unique and new, so I do not put it in boxes, like I say. But the speedy trial isn't happening, and I started to say this. So it used to be I'd be calling the whoever was doing the investigation. They'd say, well, we can't really talk to you until the investigation is done. All right, and then they'd be done, and then they'd have their little neat, and then they'd charge the person with whatever information they had. It wasn't this ongoing, let's keep collecting information for years and years. Now they do that. They'll just keep the investigation going till the very end. How do you handle that as an attorney or as a litigant when they don't have all of their evidence up front yet, and they're just bringing more things in and manipulating and engineering things a certain way?
I think
another thing that's happened with that, that's what?
General Flynn is the perfect example of that.
A perfect example. The obstruction, too, of evidence. Now, I've done this before in my criminal defense matters. I've said, can I have the evidence? And they just give you all of it. I had one case where they talked with a psychic. They gave me that, And that's not, and then they did their duty. Well, you have all the evidence that we have against you. We've done our due diligence. You have everything. I'm not talking about that evidence, okay? That comes later. What out of these zillions of paperworks or people that you've talked to are you going to use against me so I can focus my defense on certain things? That's lost in our legal system. Ask any defense attorney. Wow. They do not. They'll just give you a big load of evidence. They make you pay for it, by the way, too, here in Minnesota. I don't know about Virginia. No. Do they make you actually pay to get your evidence?
I don't know, actually. Luckily, I haven't been in that position. I mean, you
don't get it unless you pay a fee
for some subpoenas
to
and
get
things
it
like that. But so what's number 5?
Number 5. Oh, you're going to love this one. Impartial decision maker. There you go. That's the judge. They don't say judge. They don't say neutral either. Impartial decision maker. So impartial is different than neutral, and I just really think neutral has been infused into our where we have a situation where neutral means, oh, we're just like AC/DC. We really don't know. We're not taking sides, that kind of thing. Impartial is a totally different attitude. In circles, I call it multi-partial. And that's what I got from Dominic Barter, who's one of the world's foremost peacemakers, who taught me circles, multi-partial. So in circles, you're multi-partial. As a judge, you're impartial, meaning you're not partial. You're just going to kind of hear the evidence impartially.
And act as an umpire.
What?
And act as an umpire.
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's
like
right
that
either.
Terminology
There's a lot
there?
of static in the courtroom. I don't think you're an umpire.
No, umpire.
In a way, yeah, you could say that.
You know. Well, that
in a way, you could say that. But impartial is just a different, like with your kids. You love them differently. But you're impartial.
Right.
But you have, the ones that have, they're all different. They're treated equally, but you're impartial to them.
Right.
You're not going to punish one more than the other for the same infraction, things like that.
Correct.
So impartial decision maker. And so you want the last one? You're going to love the last one. Appeals. An appellate process. So we have all these in Minnesota, and this is something that it occurred to me. We did a debate, like a forum, with my opponent, and they said something like, well, the Minnesota Supreme Court can only take this many cases out of the hundreds of cases they get every year. And it was a lot that they take, and it was a lot that they get. And which ones would you take? And I thought to myself, well, why can't we take them all, right? And we can't. So these people that are appealing aren't really getting justice. They're not even getting heard. They're just getting, it's the petitions to the U.S. Supreme Court too. It's the same way. You petition, and then there's only 9 of them, so they can only take so many cases. So they only take the most important ones. But what occurred to me is that the appellate court is very busy, busy. And when you think about it, a lot of people don't appeal. They don't have the money to appeal. They don't have a lawyer that wants to appeal. They are tired. They are mentally drained. They have no energy. They know that when they appeal, the lower court orders are just going to keep going. It's probably going to be moot. So they don't appeal, but yet our appellate courts are very, very busy. This is a sign that the lower court judges are not doing their job. So as a Supreme Court justice, I think I want to minimize, by making the lower court's jobs do their job and follow the Constitution, and actually be impartial, and actually, through these circles, we wouldn't even have as many cases. And that way I can almost like eliminate appellate court, not eliminate it, but have it be where, oh my gosh, it's not, people aren't appealing because of sour grapes. They're appealing because they had their kids taken away. They're paying too much money, some unfairness. And most of the time, the unfairness is there, and they just have to live with it. And that has to be anxiety producing. That has to be, your mental health is affected. And it's very, very sad that we can't take all these appeals, and that there are so many. And those are just a small percentage of the people that want to appeal and can't.
Well, unfortunately, Michelle, we are going to have to end this, wrap it up. But I want you to tell people before we wrap it up why they should vote for you. I mean, I know why I would vote for you. I think you would be very fair. You're honest, even when you tell me things I don't want to hear, because you're not going to sugarcoat it. And so you're going to be direct. And so I know, if I was lucky enough, and I have tons of cousins in Minnesota, I hope they're listening and they vote for you. Tell the people why they should vote for you.
Well, the biggest reason is I'm not afraid to speak out about the corruption, about the legal tyranny, and about the need to restore justice. I am, that's my goal. Another reason is it's not going to be business as usual with Michelle MacDonald on the Supreme Court. My opponent is business as usual. He likes his job. He wants to allow for more access. He was talking the other day, maybe we should have paralegals helping people go through the court system. And I'm like, how about making it free, right? How about getting funding instead of the millions of dollars that the Supreme Court asked for to fund our court systems? How about funding some real justice? So I am going to defend your constitutional rights, Minnesota, and all of you out there, by eliminating the bureaucracy and making certain that the judicial branch upholds the rule of law and the Constitution so that we can restore faith and fairness and justice for all.
So everybody in Minnesota, or if you're listening and you know someone in Minnesota, please share this with them. Please let them know their vote is a vote for our country, for the American way, for the American dream of being able to walk into the courtroom and feel like you're going to be treated fairly by a judge. And if you're not in Minnesota, it'll go to Michelle. If you vote.
I have said that many times. There will be a connection with all of the judges in the state of Minnesota and the people, the community that they serve, and the fear, it needs to go away.
The trickle-down effect. If you have good people on your Supreme Court, they're not going to put up with the shenanigans in your circuit courts and your district courts.
Right.
So vote Michelle MacDonald. And as we wrap up here, and thank you, Michelle, for being on, and I'm looking forward to having you many more times.
Thank you, Janice. Anytime.
And for JudicialPedia.com, I hope you'll go there, you'll add your case so that you can be a part of making the change that we need in our courts to hold our judges and lawyers accountable. Remember the 4 essential human freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. We all need to live without fear in our lives, and that our government is pushing on us. They're pushing us to be afraid of everything. So
faith, family, and freedom.
Family and freedom, that's right. So
faith, family, and freedom.
Faith, family, and freedom. That's right. So thank you very much for joining us in our first show, and we look forward to being back next Wednesday and doing it again. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you, Michelle. So what do you think?